Colorado Territory, 1868. The moon hung like a silver dollar in the night sky over Whisper Creek. Horace Yates reined in his mare at the edge of the cemetery, confused by the flicker of lantern light dancing between the grave markers. At 25, he had seen his share of strange sights across the frontier, but a lone figure digging in a cemetery well past midnight ranked among the most peculiar. His body ached from the 14-hour ride. The cattle drive had finished 2 days early, and all he wanted was to return to his small cabin and collapse onto his bunk. Instead, curiosity pulled him forward. He dismounted silently, tethered his horse to a gnarled oak, and crept closer. The figure, a woman in a dark dress, knelt beside a freshly dug hole, her shoulders tensed as she placed something in the earth. Horace's hand instinctively moved to the Remington revolver on his hip. Out here, 3 years after the war's end, the territory remained lawless. A person burying something under cover of darkness rarely had innocent intentions. "Evening, ma'am," he called softly, stepping from the shadows. The woman gasped, springing to her feet with surprising agility. In the pale moonlight, Horace caught a glimpse of her face, young and beautiful, framed by dark hair that had come loose from its pins. Her blue dress was simple but well-made, now smudged with cemetery dirt. "Please," she whispered, glancing frantically at the small hole, "please just go." Horace kept his distance, hands visible, not looking for trouble. Just passing by and saw the light. Her eyes, wide with fear, darted toward the nearby tree line. He recognized that look, the desperate calculation of someone preparing to flee. "Whatever it is you're burying," he said evenly, "I'm not here to judge or report you, just making sure everything's all right." "Nothing is all right," she said, her voice breaking. "Nothing has been all right since I came to this God's forsaken territory." The bitterness in her voice stirred something in Horace. He had carried similar feelings since leaving Tennessee after losing his family farm in the war. The West promised opportunity, but delivered mostly hardship and isolation. "I understand that feeling well enough," he said. "I'm Horace Yates. I work cattle for the Harper spread north of town." "Willow," she replied cautiously. "Willow Montgomery." Recognition dawned. "Montgomery. You're Vernon Montgomery's widow." Her posture stiffened. "Yes, for 3 months now." The town had buzzed with the news when Montgomery, a man twice her age and the owner of the mercantile, had been found dead in his store. Natural causes, they said, though rumors suggested otherwise. She glanced again at the woods, then down at her half-finished task. "Please don't run," Horace said gently. "Whatever trouble you're in, running makes it worse. I've learned that lesson the hard way." "You don't understand," she said, fingers twisting the fabric of her skirt. "If anyone discovers what I'm doing." "Then let me help you finish," he offered, surprising himself. "Two can work faster than one." Confusion crossed her face. "You don't even know what I'm burying." "True," he admitted, "but I know what it's like to feel alone with your secrets." For a long moment, she studied him. Horace remained still, letting her make her choice. Finally, her shoulders sagged. "Very well, Mr. Yates, but you may regret your offer." She knelt again by the hole, and Horace approached slowly. In the dim lantern light, he saw what lay partially buried, a strongbox and several leather-bound ledgers. "My husband's private accounts," she explained, her voice barely above a whisper. "If certain people knew these existed." "Why not burn them?" he asked. "Because I might need them someday to protect myself." She looked up at him, moonlight catching in her eyes. Vernon wasn't the respectable businessman everyone believed. These contained proof of arrangements, debts, things that powerful men in this territory would kill to keep hidden. Horace's frontier instinct screamed caution, but something stronger, a need to protect this vulnerable woman, overrode it. "Let me help," he said, taking the small shovel from her hands. They worked in silence, burying the box and books deep beneath the soil of what appeared to be an unmarked grave. When they finished, Willow placed wildflowers over the disturbed earth. "There was never a body here," she explained, seeing his questioning look. "Just a stone I had placed. A safe hiding place no one would disturb." "Clever," Horace admitted. As they stood to leave, the sound of approaching horses froze them both. Lantern light appeared on the road leading to the cemetery. "They've found me," Willow whispered, terror evident in her voice. Without thinking, Horace grasped her hand. "This way." He pulled her toward his horse, helping her mount before swinging up behind her. Hold tight. They rode hard through the back of the cemetery, taking a game trail into the woods just as voices called out behind them. Horace felt Willow trembling against him as they disappeared into the darkness, leaving Whisper Creek and her secrets behind. 3 days later, Horace sat outside the lined shack, watching the sunrise paint the distant mountains gold and crimson. Inside, Willow still slept on his bunk, exhausted from their journey. The remote cabin used during seasonal cattle drives offered temporary sanctuary. His boss wouldn't miss him for another week when the next drive was scheduled to begin. Until then, they could plan their next move. Willow had shared her story in pieces during their flight. Married at 18 to a man 30 years her senior, she discovered only after the wedding that Vernon Montgomery's business dealings extended far beyond the mercantile. He'd been the territory's most efficient loan shark, holding debts against half the county, including Judge Harmon and Sheriff Cole, the very men now hunting her. "You should have left me behind," she said, appearing in the doorway. At 22, with her dark brown hair loose around her shoulders and wearing one of Horace's spare shirts over her dress, she looked both vulnerable and determined. "That's not who I am," Horace replied, pouring a cup of coffee from the pot over the fire. "You don't even know me," she countered, accepting the tin cup. "I could be lying about everything." "You could be," he agreed, "but I don't think you are." The morning sun caught the gold flecks in her hazel eyes as she studied him. "Why risk yourself for a stranger? Most men out here look after themselves first." Horace considered her questions seriously. "My pa taught me that a man's character is defined by what he does when no one's watching. Out here, it's easy to forget that. Easy to believe the frontier demands selfishness to survive." "And you don't believe that?" "I did for a while," he admitted. "After the war, I came west thinking I needed to be hard, untrusting. Thought connections were dangerous. That belief kept me alive, but," he gestured to the empty wilderness surrounding them, "it's no way to truly live." Willow's expression softened. "Vernon told me trust was for fools. That in this territory, you survive by holding power over others." "And do you believe that?" She looked away. "I don't know what I believe anymore." Their conversation was interrupted by the distant sound of approaching riders. Horace was on his feet instantly, hand on his revolver. "Stay inside," he instructed. "There's a trap door under the rug, root cellar. If things go badly, wait until nightfall and take my horse. Head north to Fort Collins." "Horace." "Please," he said firmly. "I can handle this better if I'm not worried about you." She disappeared inside as 3 riders crested the hill. Horace recognized them immediately, ranch hands from the Harper spread where he worked. "Yates," called Liam Jenkins, the foreman's son. "There you are, you son of a gun. Pa's been looking all over for you." Horace forced a casual smile. "Just needed some quiet after the drive. What brings you boys out this way?" Jenkins dismounted, followed by the others. Orders changed, drives pushed up. "We head out tomorrow with the North herd." He eyed the cabin. "You entertaining company out here?" "Just enjoying the solitude," Horace replied evenly. "Well, that's not what folks in town are saying," drawled the younger hand Thomas. "Word is you helped Montgomery's widow escape justice. Sheriff's got a posse looking for you both." Horace's expression remained neutral. "That so?" Jenkins studied him carefully. "Is she here, Horace? Because if she is, you need to know what you're mixed up in. They're saying she poisoned Montgomery, stole from his business partners." "Strange," Horace replied. 3 days ago it was natural causes." The third cowhand, older and quieter, finally spoke. "Judge is offering $500 for information leading to her capture. That's serious money, Yates." "Indeed it is, Miller." Horace leaned against the cabin wall. "Makes a man wonder what they're really after." A tense silence fell. Jenkins broke it first. "Look, Horace, you've been straight with us since you joined up. If you say you haven't seen her, we'll take your word and ride back to report you're heading in." Horace saw the opening. "I appreciate that, Jenkins. I'll be back by sundown, just need to gather my things." The men seemed satisfied, turning back toward their horses. As they mounted, Jenkins paused. "One more thing, if you do happen to cross paths with the widow," he tossed something that Horace caught reflexively. "My sister's wedding announcement arrived yesterday. Made me think about what matters in this life. Not everyone in Whisper Creek believes the stories they're spreading. With that cryptic message, the three riders departed. Horace watched until they disappeared over the ridge before opening his hand. Inside lay a small brass key with an engraved W on its head. When Willow emerged from the cabin, he handed it to her. "What is this?" she asked. "No idea," Horace admitted. "But I think we just found out we have allies." "Or it's a trap," she countered. "Only one way to find out." They traveled under cover of darkness, avoiding the main trails. Horace's knowledge of the territory's hidden paths proved invaluable as they made their way toward the small homestead Jenkins had sketched roughly on a map left beneath the key. Dawn was breaking when they reached the isolated farm nestled in a hidden valley. A woman in a plain dress stood on the porch, rifle in hand. "That's far enough," she called. "State your business." "Martha Jenkins," Horace asked, keeping his hands visible. "Your brother Liam sent us." The woman lowered her rifle slightly. "You'd be Yates then, and the widow Montgomery." Willow stepped forward. "Yes. Though I prefer Willow." Martha's expression softened. "Well, come inside before someone spots you. My husband's out checking the perimeter, but he'll be back soon." The small farmhouse was modest but clean. Martha served them coffee and biscuits as she explained. Montgomery held notes on half the farms in the county, including ours. When crops failed 2 seasons back, we had to borrow. The interest was criminal, but we had no choice. She glanced at Willow. "No offense intended." "None taken," Willow replied. "I learned of Vernon's business practices only after we were married. I had no say in the matter." "That matches what we've heard," Martha said. "When Montgomery died, Judge Harmon and Sheriff Cole took over collecting those debts. But they're claiming higher amounts than what was originally owed." "The ledgers," Willow whispered, understanding dawning. "They need my husband's actual records to disappear so they can inflate the debts." Martha nodded. "There's more. My brother overheard the sheriff talking about Montgomery's special collection. Apparently your husband kept evidence against every important man in the territory, insurance, he called it. And now they think I have it," Willow concluded. "Do you?" Martha asked directly. Willow hesitated, glancing at Horace. He nodded encouragingly. "Yes," she admitted, "hidden where they'll never find it." Martha's husband, Daniel, returned shortly after, bringing news that troubled them all. The posse had expanded, with bounty hunters joining the search. Whisper Creek was buzzing with rumors that Willow had not only poisoned her husband, but had conspired with a cowhand, Horace, to steal a fortune in gold. "They're setting us both up," Horace realized. "If they catch us now, they can claim justice was served and no one will question it." "We need to recover those ledgers," Willow said firmly. "It's our only leverage." "Going back to Whisper Creek is suicide," Daniel warned. "Not if we have help," Horace countered, an idea forming. The plan took 3 days to arrange. Messages passed through a network of farmers and ranchers who had all suffered under Montgomery's loan schemes and now faced even more crushing demands from the judge and sheriff. On the 4th night, Horace and Willow slipped back into Whisper Creek. The cemetery lay quiet under a clouded moon. They moved silently between the graves until they reached the unmarked stone where they'd buried the strongbox. "Something's wrong," Willow whispered as they approached. "The ground." Horace saw it too. The earth had been disturbed. "Looking for this," a voice called from the darkness. Sheriff Cole stepped into view, the strongbox under one arm and his revolver aimed steadily at Horace's chest. Behind him, 4 deputies emerged from the shadows. "You two have led us on quite a chase," the sheriff said. "Though I must say, returning to the scene of the crime shows a remarkable lack of intelligence." "The only crime here is how you and the judge have been defrauding honest people," Horace replied evenly, keeping his hands visible. The sheriff laughed. "Big talk from a saddle tramp. You know, when this is over, folks will remember you as the drifter who helped a black widow murder her husband for gold. Fitting end for a nobody." "Is that what happened to my husband?" Willow asked, her voice stronger than Horace had ever heard it. "Did you and Judge Harmon murder him when he threatened to expose your corruption?" The sheriff's expression darkened. "Careful, Mrs. Montgomery. A grieving widow should watch her accusations." "A grieving widow should seek justice," she countered. "Vernon was many things, most of them terrible, but he kept meticulous records. Records that show how you and the judge have been skimming from his operations for years." Records no one will ever see, the sheriff snarled, patting the strongbox. Once you're both hanging for murder, this will all be forgotten. Actually, came a new voice, those records are already being seen by quite an audience. Judge Harmon stumbled forward into the clearing, pushed by Liam Jenkins. Behind them stood at least 20 men and women, farmers, shopkeepers, and ranchers from across the county. "What is this?" Sheriff Cole demanded, his revolver wavering. "Justice," answered Horace. "The real kind." Martha Jenkins stepped forward. "While you've been hunting the widow and Mr. Yates, they've been gathering support. Turns out, when people learn they've all been victim to the same scheme, they tend to band together." "This is absurd," the sheriff blustered. "I represent the law in this territory." "Not anymore," said a distinguished man Horace recognized as the federal marshal from Denver. "I've been investigating reports of corruption in Whisper Creek for months, Mrs. Montgomery's evidence was the missing piece we needed." The sheriff's face contorted with rage. "What evidence? I have the strongbox right here." "A decoy," Willow explained calmly. "The real ledgers and my husband's collection of evidence against you both were delivered to the federal authorities 3 days ago. The ones we buried were copies." Horace couldn't help but admire her composure as she continued. "You were right about one thing, Sheriff. My husband did keep insurance, letters, bank drafts, and signed confessions from every important man in the territory, including detailed accounts of your arrangement with Judge Harmon to take over his operation after his death. Which you caused," she added softly. The sheriff lunged toward Willow with a roar of fury, but Horace was faster. His fist connected with Cole's jaw, sending the corrupt lawman sprawling in the dirt. Within minutes, the sheriff and judge were in custody. As the crowd dispersed, Horace found Willow standing alone by her husband's grave. "You never told me you suspected them of murdering Vernon," he said quietly. "I wasn't certain until recently," she admitted. "Vernon was cruel and calculating, but he wasn't stupid. He knew they were planning something. The night before he died, he showed me where he kept his insurance and made me memorize the combination to the real strongbox." "You never loved him," Horace observed. "No," she said simply, "but I didn't wish him dead. He gave me shelter when my family lost everything after the war. Our arrangement was clear from the beginning." Horace hesitated, then asked the question that had haunted him. "Will you stay in Whisper Creek now?" Willow gazed at the town lights in the distance. "I don't think so. There are too many memories here, too many people who will always see me as Montgomery's widow." "Where will you go?" "I don't know," she admitted. "The marshal says Vernon's legitimate assets will come to me once the investigation concludes. It should be enough to start somewhere new." Horace nodded, a hollow feeling spreading in his chest. After everything they'd been through, the thought of her leaving felt like losing something precious he'd only just discovered. "What about you?" she asked. "Will you stay with the Harper spread?" "No," he decided. "It's time for a change." They stood in silence as moonlight broke through the clouds, illuminating the cemetery in silver light. "Horace," Willow said hesitantly, "when you found me that night, why did you really help me, the truth?" He considered his answer carefully. "For years after the war, I believed the frontier was no place for connection, that surviving out here meant keeping to yourself, trusting no one. When I saw you that night, something changed. I realized I'd been surviving but not living." He met her gaze directly. "You asked me to leave and I couldn't, not because of curiosity or some misplaced sense of chivalry, but because in that moment your pain mattered to me. It was the first time in years I'd felt something real." Tears glistened in Willow's eyes. "I've been alone my entire adult life, even in marriage. When you found me, I was terrified, not just of being caught, but of trusting anyone with my truth. You showed me another way is possible." Horace took a deep breath. "Come with me," he said suddenly. "Not as Montgomery's widow or as someone I rescued, but as yourself. We could head north, maybe try for land in Wyoming. I've saved enough for a modest start. You'd want that, a life with someone you barely know." "I know enough," he said firmly. "I know you're brave, clever, and stronger than anyone gives you credit for. I know that together we survived things that should have broken us, and I know that when I think of riding out of this territory without you, nothing ahead seems worth the journey." Willow stepped closer, her hand finding his. My whole life I've made practical decisions. Marrying Vernon was practical. Burying those ledgers was practical. Her fingers tightened around his. For once I want to choose something simply because it feels right. Under the vast Colorado sky, surrounded by the silent witnesses of the cemetery, Horace pulled her gently into his arms. Their kiss was tentative at first, then deepened with the promise of all that might lie ahead. Wyoming Territory, 1869. The small homestead nestled in the shadow of the Medicine Bow Mountains stood as a testament to a year's hard work. The cabin was modest but solid, with a stone chimney from which smoke curled lazily into the autumn air. A corral held a small herd of horses, the beginning of the breeding operation Horace had dreamed of establishing. Willow stood on the porch watching as Horace returned from town with supplies loaded in their wagon. Her dark hair was braided simply down her back, and her calico dress showed the slight swell of early pregnancy. Letters came, Horace called as he approached. One from Martha and Daniel, they've paid off their farm with the settlement from the territory, and one from the marshal, the last of the corrupt officials, has been sentenced. That chapter is finally closed, Willow said with relief. Horace jumped down from the wagon and climbed the porch steps, pulling her into an embrace. Speaking of chapters, Mrs. Yates, our neighbor Mrs. Peterson, asked again when you'll finish reading that novel to the children. Apparently, they're quite desperate to know if the princess escapes the dragon. Willow laughed. Tomorrow afternoon, I've promised to bring apple cake as well. You've become the most popular person in the settlement, Horace observed with pride, a far cry from hiding in cemeteries at midnight. And you've become the respected horse breeder you always wanted to be, she countered, tracing the lines of his face. A far cry from the lonely cowhand who believed the frontier was no place for love. Their small community of homesteaders had welcomed them warmly. No one knew of their past in Colorado Territory, and they shared the truth only with those who became true friends. To most, they were simply the Yates family, hardworking, generous, and clearly devoted to each other. Do you ever regret it? Horace asked as they watched the sun setting behind the mountains, leaving everything behind. Taking a chance on me. Willow rested her head against his shoulder, not for a single moment. Vernon once told me that in the West, the only security was in what you could hold onto by force. He never understood that real security comes from what you build together. Horace placed his hand gently over the swell of their growing child, and were building something wonderful. As twilight settled over their homestead, Horace reflected on the strange twists of fate that had brought them together. One midnight encounter in a cemetery had challenged everything he believed about survival on the frontier. He had learned that true strength wasn't found in isolation, but in the courage to connect, to trust, to love even when it seemed reckless. I was thinking, Willow said, breaking into his thoughts, if it's a girl, we might name her Hope. And if it's a boy? She smiled, perhaps Vernon, to remember that even from difficult beginnings, something beautiful can grow. Horace kissed her forehead. I like that, a reminder that our past shaped us but doesn't define us. Inside their cabin, a fire burned warmly in the hearth. Outside, the vast Wyoming wilderness stretched in every direction, beautiful and challenging. But neither of them feared it anymore. They had discovered that the frontier, for all its harshness, rewarded those who dared to build connections stronger than the forces that would pull them apart. As stars emerged in the darkening sky, Horace and Willow Yates stood together on the porch of the home they had built, their future stretching before them like an unwritten story, one they would author together, page by page, day by day. The cowboy who once believed love had no place on the frontier, and the widow who thought trust was for fools had found in each other the most precious frontier truth of all. That even in the wildest places, the human heart's greatest strength lies in its capacity to open rather than close, to trust rather than fear, and to love despite all reason to the contrary.